Welcome back, everyone. We get to talk about, the first MacBook I'm talking about this year, and it's actually the 2015 Retina Macbook Pros. Now, this was actually my main MacBook I used up until last year, and I still kind of use it occasionally. I did install Windows Boot Camp on it, and I can go ahead and, boot into Windows, and I do a lot of different things with this MacBook behind the scenes, and I do think it's actually a pretty decent MacBook. I did install a couple of games on it via Windows Boot Camp, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm actually really surprised how good of a job these MacBooks do. Now, I did own both the 13-inch and the 15-inch models at one point. Currently, I do own the 15-inch. I actually own two 15-inch MacBooks, 2015 ones. And like I mentioned, these are very, very interesting MacBooks. They have a lot of capability still. However, there are some downsides of this MacBook right now that I'll get into in a second, and it just kind of is in that indifferent period where some people will care about it, some people won't. But personally, I love these MacBooks and they're just great machines. And now that Apple, as of this point, with the newer M1 Max and M1 Pro MacBooks, they actually kind of revived this model of MacBook. And it's crazy, you would never think that, but they actually ended up doing that. And that's what's so awesome from Apple. They literally went ahead and kind of fixed everything that was wrong with these earlier MacBooks, and they went ahead and just allowed us to do it with this one, which is so cool. So now if you had these MacBooks, you don't really have to go ahead and pick up these MacBooks if you still want the ports, because you can just go buy the M1 Pro or M1 Max MacBooks and still have the pretty good port selection. I would say a better port selection because I love USB Type-C ports. So on the outside of these MacBooks, we had a pretty basic setup. So we had the Apple logo up top that actually did light up, which I really do miss a lot. On the right side or on the left side, you actually had two Thunderbolt 1 or 2 ports. I actually don't remember. I think they're Thunderbolt 2 ports. You had the MagSafe charger as well. You had a one USB port. Then you had a headphone jack, which was really cool. And on the right side, you actually had another USB port as well. Then you had an HDMI port, but you also had that SD card slot as well. Now with these latest MacBooks, those specific ports have actually came back, which is another cool thing. Like I mentioned, I was in love with these MacBooks, and I owned pretty much all the unibody MacBooks with the SD cards and everything up until last year when I moved over to the M1, chipset for my MacBook. And I've been using the 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro since then. It's been about a year and some change probably. And here's the thing, I love this MacBook too, but I miss those port selections, and I actually haven't picked up. I did buy the M1 Pro ones, but I didn't really see that big of a reason. There were lots of software glitches I was having, so I switched back to my M1 MacBook, and honestly, still, whenever I pick up my 2015 MacBooks, I am so happy about the port selection that you have on this thing, and I'm so happy that Apple brought those ports back. So this thing, it's very interesting because it still feels extremely premium. It looks very, much the same as many of the new MacBooks that have came out since then. You don't have things like, a notch or 120Hz display or, USB Type-C ports, but you still have a pretty functional MacBook. And for basically everything you would ever do in your life, this thing is still a really capable machine. And that's something I always look at. Any type of MacBook I plan on buying, I always want to make sure it has ports. And I don't think I will ever go back to a MacBook that doesn't have, an SD card slot and an HDMI port and all those other things. And this MacBook actually has those capabilities, which is so beautiful. So without a doubt, I'm a humongous fan of this specific MacBook in terms of the port selection and everything. But there's also something else about this MacBook. You can actually upgrade a couple of things within this device. I think since the 2016 or 2017 MacBooks, you were not actually able to go ahead and upgrade really anything about these MacBooks. But you actually have that ability with this specific device. I was actually able to, I think you can increase or fix the battery life by yourself or something, the battery size. However, I was actually able to go ahead and increase the storage. I had, I think, a hard drive in my specific MacBook, or maybe I had a low amount of storage, but I was actually able to go ahead and put in an SSD inside of it with 1 terabyte in it with a very easily, and it was very easy. I am not somebody who's, going to take apart a bunch of stuff, and sometimes I do and I end up messing stuff up. I was able to do it very easily on my 2015 15-inch MacBook, and it was a very good process, and I'm so happy I did that. I think this was about 2 years ago, and like I mentioned, it really wasn't that bad of an idea, and I'm so happy that I did it. Now that's just touching the surface. I mean, literally we just talked about pretty much everything on the outside of these MacBooks. Now turning on this MacBook, it is still a very functional machine. Luckily for us, this thing is still supported with software, which is really awesome. But the sad thing is, I don't know how much longer this thing is going to be supported. I want to say, and I hope this thing lasts forever. I don't see why it couldn't. But, not everything is going to last forever. We already know this. And this is one of the lowest supported MacBooks that are available on the latest version of software. Now, I don't think Apple is going to just, end the support of this thing like that so early, but I don't see why they would keep this thing around if they kind of repaired and fixed all the issues that they had with the previous generations, with the 2016 to about the 2021 or the 2019 MacBooks, one or the other. And I think that's a really big thing to keep in mind. Apple did a really, really good job with this type of MacBook. And I do think the half-life of this thing is over. I think, this thing is probably going to be ending off with the latest version of software. Again, it's not unfortunate. It's not a sad thing. It's just kind of what happens. But it also, depending on how you look at it, I don't really think that's that big of a deal. I personally I think I'm still like 2 versions behind of software, like a version behind of software right now. I've not updated to the latest version. And that's the thing about macOS. I feel like I have to really give it like a year before I update, and that's just kind of what happens. So I'll probably end up like not even updating probably for the next 2 years on this MacBook, to be honest. I wouldn't recommend it though. And with something like the 2015 MacBook, if you're in the same boat, then this thing's probably a decent option in my opinion. So that's another big thing to keep in mind as well. Now in terms of performance, these things came out in a couple of different sizes. The base model, the 13-inch ones had 8GB of RAM. The 15-inch ones based out at 16GB of RAM. And there were a couple of different models within them too. You can get them with different, type of clock speeds and everything. But one thing I will tell you is that in my opinion, both the 13-inch one that I had and the 15-inch one that I had gave me very, very good experiences. I had tremendous experiences with both, and I love that 13-inch one. That 13-inch one was a very good size. I literally took it with me everywhere, and it was a beautiful MacBook. I edited pretty much all my videos for the first couple of years on this MacBook. I think I owned a 2014 one first, and then a 2015 one after, and I had that for about 2 years, and I was like chopping up probably 3 or 4 videos a day on that thing, and that thing was amazing. It was a workhorse. I had a ton of power within it, and I never complained about the speed. The only thing I complained about possibly was the fan noise, and that's the same for both the 2015, the 15-inch one, and the 13-inch one. The fan noise on that MacBook was crazy. Literally anything I would do on it, it would just start like increasing the fan noise, and that was honestly kind of annoying. However, you kind of get used to it and you kind of know what to expect, and I don't really think even that was that big of a deal, towards the end of it when I was using it. I just kind of got used to it, and because of the fan noise and everything, the battery life obviously wasn't that good either, so it was just one of those things that you kind of got used to. I didn't really think it was that big of a deal when I was using it, but it was kind of annoying. And now that, the new M1 MacBooks, the fans pretty much never come on, you pretty much appreciate the newer MacBooks, and you can pretty much see how this was a really big upgrade coming from the previous generation in my opinion. Now, I think everything else about this MacBook in my opinion still completely holds up. If you are somebody who doesn't really plan on doing anything super crazy with your MacBook, like you don't plan on doing like crazy things with your MacBook, you don't want to go ahead and edit super insane like 8K videos or anything, then you're probably going to have a pretty good time with it. Like I mentioned, these are still those MacBooks where you can install a boot camp on it, and I was able to go ahead and actually, pretty much play some, Windows games like Valorant. I think I may have played Genshin Impact on this thing, I don't remember, but I played a lot of games on this thing and I had a really good time with it. And even on like stock macOS, there's still a lot of things you can do, like edit videos and so many different things that this MacBook can handle that I personally am a huge fan of, and I would definitely recommend it. If you're into a market where for some reason you can't pick up another MacBook and you have to buy a really cheap MacBook that's a little older, yeah, the 2015 one, it really doesn't get too much better than this from a price tag standpoint, but do keep in mind it could go out of business. It could, be completely outdated very soon, and you may be in a better situation if you were to go and get something like the M1 MacBook Air, the M1 Mac Mini if you have the option to. But I still like these MacBooks and I still use mine every so often. So that pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.